All right, let's talk about assignment number 5. So we are transitioning out of the narrative essay portion of the semester into something that has a little more sophistication. So I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to what the expectations are now and really what does a rhetorical analysis entail. If you look at the very top of the module in italics, it says rhetorical techniques handout plus Mayers plus McCullough. Those are the 3 essential elements of this module. There is a rhetorical techniques handout included that has a foundational 4 and then a sophisticated and stylish 30. There is an essay by Nancy Mayers and there is a speech by David McCullough Jr. And it says you will now shift to analyzing how other writers and speakers make strategic choices for audience, purpose, context. Now, what does that necessarily mean? So think about any time you've seen a political advertisement, you've seen a political speech, you've read an editorial or opinion piece, or you yourself have been trying to be persuasive to someone else, or someone else is trying to maybe bend you to their will to make you do something or believe something. It could be a family member, it could be a significant other, any of those situations. So what is the purpose behind it? There are 3 main purposes. One is to inform, another is to persuade, and the third is to entertain. And there can be a combination of 2 or all 3. So let me give you an example. I could give a political speech. I could run for political office and I could try to be entertaining because I want to be engaging and I want to keep your attention. But ultimately, I want to be persuasive. And what I want to persuade you is that I'm the best person for the spot as governor or mayor or House of Representatives, whatever, any of those things. I could also go even farther and try to appeal to your emotions. I could try to make you angry about something my opponent did. And I could try to win by not necessarily talking about all the great things I could do, but talk about all the bad things that my opponent does or did. Does if they're an incumbent, or did if they had possibly held office in the past. Now, beyond audience, our purpose is audience. So know your audience. You know, if you think about political speeches, politicians go to different groups and different lobbyists, and they spin their message a different way when they're talking to different people in different groups, trying to convince them. So one thing you also have to think about, you know, if you want to think about it on an easier level, you know, when you're a child, who did you go to when you wanted to convince a parent of something? You know, of your innocence when something went wrong, or can you go out this weekend even if you were grounded about something that your brother or sister did to you that you want some kind of retribution or punishment? Was it mom or dad? And if it was mom and dad wasn't home and you usually went to dad, how would you change your message in order to get what you wanted from that person? So that's audience. It's taking into account who you're talking to, who you're trying to persuade. And then we also can talk about appeals. Logical appeals would be, and I already used an example of emotional appeal, right? I could use language to try to make you upset or angry at my opponent, but logical appeals are founded in fact, logic. I could try to persuade you not to smoke. And if I'm a doctor, you know, my credibility comes from the fact that I'm a doctor. You know, my background, my education, how many years I've been practicing, and I could throw statistics at you. I could also pull out an emotional appeal if for some reason, somehow, you know, you were in the doctor's office and I'm talking to you about smoking, and then I said, here, I'm going to have somebody from the room next door come in and they have a stoma. So they, you know, have a hole in their neck and they speak through a vibrating device. And that would create an emotional appeal because you might look at that and you might think to yourself, I don't want that to happen to me. And it might even make you feel, you know, physically negative because you're like, wow, if that's the consequence, I really don't want that to happen to me. And that could be a combination of emotional and logical appeals, you know, that somebody could use. Beyond that, you know, I did mention credibility. You know, I'm an English teacher. My background, my degrees are in English and education. So I might be a good writer, which I am, but I might be a good writer and I'm good at understanding writing and being able to analyze it, but that doesn't mean everything that I write is credible because I have degrees in English and education. So let me give you this example. There are people that write for the New York Times and their editorials who have backgrounds in journalism or some other four-year degree, and they write editorial pieces every week on things that they're not necessarily experts in. So you can't just say, "Ooh, it was published in the New York Times," or this person has a degree in the humanities from Ohio University, maybe journalism, maybe just English. And so they're credible. No, what they do is they establish their credibility on the backs of more knowledgeable others. So there are some people whose credibility comes 100% from their background, from their education, doctors, right? But maybe I don't have the necessary just credibility on paper to write about this. And so the people that I quote from, the sources that I use, I'm building my credibility on the backs of those people and the facts and statistics and the logical appeals that I'm taking from them, quoting from them. And that's what you're going to do as we transition from the rhetorical analysis to the argumentative research essay. This is a perfect example of that. That's why we're doing this. A rhetorical analysis is basically, can I break down for parts somebody else's text, like a mentor text, like Nancy Mayer's text, David McCullough Jr.'s text, and understand what their purpose is, how they try to accomplish that purpose through different rhetorical techniques, who their audience is, and then how credible they are, or how they build their credibility through their quoting and their statistics and their more knowledgeable others. How do they do that? And then you're going to do that, because you, like me, do not have instant credibility on paper. So you're going to have to build that credibility through the research that you find, that you build. You're going to have to think about, what's my purpose in this argument? Who's my audience? What can I do research to find logical appeals to back it up? Can I incorporate some emotional appeals? Can I look at that rhetorical techniques handout? Ooh, I remember how Nancy Mayer's did this. Pamela Paul used rhetorical questions. She used an aphora at the very end of her article to draw attention to her main argument. I'm going to try something like that, because that will make me more persuasive. That will make my argument more sophisticated. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. So when you complete A and B, it's important that you read Nancy Mayer's essay, her article, Disability, that you go through the Google Slides where I am showing you, I'm trying to demonstrate how you would break that down as a rhetorical analysis. So you can look at the slides and then look through the rhetorical techniques handout yourself, and then show me in your response for A that you've kind of put some things together, that you get it, and for B, that I understand what a rhetorical analysis is, because ultimately you're going to have to write it, and the level of sophistication, maybe you've never heard the term rhetorical analysis, you've never written one, you don't know what it is, but now you know why we're doing it, what it does, what it accomplishes, and how this is setting the stage for the next thing you're going to write, which is the argumentative research essay. Then you're going to watch the David McCullough Jr. video. You can also read the text of the speech if you're more of a text learner instead of listening and auditory and visual. And then you're going to identify his argument and his tone. Tone is important. I give you the text of the speech. You can break down the tone. And then I want you to think about, as an audience, because audience is a part of rhetorical analysis, how would a fellow faculty member react as a part of the audience? How would a parent or student react, or a parent of a student? And then how would a student react? Just so you get a chance to kind of think about the different reactions that would happen to one piece of argument. And then you have a discussion board where you're going to have to post about something that you've read or heard recently, an article, a speech, an advertisement, a social media post, where you try to apply a rhetorical strategy or technique to it. And you can use the rhetorical techniques handout. I mean, at its basic, you could try to assess who the audience was, maybe what their purpose was, whether they're using logical or emotional appeals, were there any loaded words in there, Did they ask any rhetorical questions? And then I give you some response starters, and you have to respond to at least one of your classmates, because this is an attempt to try to push us beyond the asynchronous online class and more to the can we mimic some of the face-to-face, so that this class isn't, I'm just submitting stuff. Can I have some interaction with my classmates? Okay, so as you work through this week, make sure you raise your hand and reach out to me if you have any questions, and I look forward to reading your responses.